to the Token and Hobbs Show on the Roads to Liberty Network.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Roads to Liberty podcast, and the Monday night, I am your host, Token, joined with my partner in crime, Ben Backus over there. What's up, Ben? How you doing?
Doing well. Interested to hear about this RLC.
Yeah, awesome. So we have a special guest tonight. As you guys know, this is our first episode of our Better Know a Caucus series. Now, we launched this series because there's a lot of splinter groups within the Libertarian Party and the Republican Party, each one claiming to be the proper home for libertarians everywhere. So we wanted to get different representatives of the caucuses in here so they can lay out their case as to why they deserve your support. So first up, we have Alexander Stintker from the Republican Liberty Caucus. He is the executive director there. What's going on, Alexander? Thanks for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So a buddy of mine, Stephen Bader, we had him on the podcast a while ago. He's suggested getting in touch with you, and I'm glad we did, because the Liberty Caucus is one of those libertarian organizations that has been doing a lot of work, has had a lot of history, writing on the back of the 2008-2012 Ron Paul campaign. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Liberty Caucus's history?
Well, the Republican Liberty Caucus itself started in 1991, and it started from a couple of libertarians in Florida that decided that they wanted to try a different path. And so they formed the Republican Liberty Caucus at that time. And it's because of that time frame that the Republican Liberty Caucus can use the term Republican. They're kind of grandfathered in, because one thing that the Republicans do, just like the Libertarians and just like the Democrats, they really do try to protect their name. And so the RLC was able to be the Republican Liberty Caucus starting in 91. I would say, they formed up about as well as libertarians formed up for a long time. And I'm sure you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. It's herding cats, whether you put an R next to their name or an L. But what happened is that you can see, at least within what I've been seeing lately, is that there's much more of a resurgence within the GOP of people that believe in the way, in I would say at least 80%. I mean, nobody's going to be 100%ers. Maybe some people can be, but what you see is a certain grouping of people that are coming back to the principles of liberty and freedom, and where they identify with, like what Reagan said about, libertarianism is the heart of conservatism, where you can personally be opposed to things like drug use, but the government shouldn't play a role. Or you can personally be opposed to things like gay marriage, but the government has no role in who you love and who you don't love. So separating out your personal feelings from what the government should be doing, the proper role of government, is, I think, where a lot of Republican Liberty Caucus members stand. But even within the caucus itself, you have you got a pretty wide berth, because it's the Republican Liberty Caucus. It's a caucus within the Republican Party that, if you look at our statement of principles, is pretty libertarian. I mean, I'd argue we go through it at a pretty pragmatic basis, but at the same time, it's trying to get to those principles. It's trying to get the federal government so small, that it fits inside the Constitution. We're definitely not anarchists. So the one thing that we don't have that the Libertarian Party has is people within the party that subscribe to anarchism. We definitely don't have like the anarchists within the party or within the caucus. That's something that, really the LP has more than the Democrats, or more than, the Republicans and Democrats. But it's a group of people that feel that the best way to do this is to work within the Republican Party in order to advance the principles of liberty and freedom. But I do want to make one other statement. Whatever somebody chooses to do is really their business. And I'm not here necessarily to say that everybody that's a libertarian should join the RLC. Not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is what we're doing and why we're doing it, and why some of us are choosing not to do it through the vehicle like the LP.
Well, now you say how about minarchist? Are there many minarchist types within?
Yeah, there's some. Not, I wouldn't say the most. I wouldn't say that's for the most part, though. I would say the biggest grouping of them are libertarians of, your I hate to say your base libertarian, but like your average libertarian.
Say like your classical liberals and others of that, or constitutional conservatives and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say that's a good range, but again, like if you take Trump, for instance, it's a great thought here. You have people that are like Justin Amash. that hate him and that, do everything they can to just rile his feathers as much as you can. And then you have guys like Rand Paul who take a different approach to it, that take a, try to work with whoever you're going to work with to see if you can get them to move more in your direction kind of way. So if you look, I would say that it's a good range to look between the Amashes and the Rands.
I think Amash is on the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
To come up later, isn't it?
Yeah, Amash is going to come up later, but you actually have a personal history in the Libertarian Party before you switched over to the RLC. So tell us a little bit about that. Why did you make the switch?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of the history and then I'll tell you why I made the switch. So I actually ran for office as a registered libertarian in 2010 in Florida for the U.S. Senate. I was the first U.S. Senate candidate that the LP had on the ballot in 2010. And from 2010 until 2016, I was steadfast working within the Libertarian Party. I was the vice chair of the state of Florida for a time. I helped out Adrian Wiley's campaign here in Florida. I helped out various campaigns, through that time frame. I only ended up running once because, if you run 3 or 4 times, you end up just being a whatever you call that kind of candidate. I forget what it's called at this moment, but a perennial candidate. And I didn't want to run into that. You only get 2 shots at it. So I'll wait for my second shot later on. But by 2016, and during the time frame in which I was in, there was always a grouping of people that kind of fought me all the time. And, because we wanted to get bigger, get more people registered to be libertarians and get people to win elections. In my opinion, the purpose of a political party is to win elections. Like, we can spread the word and spread the message, and that's cool. But if you're doing that and that's all you're doing, you're a think tank. You're not a political party. So in my opinion, the purpose of a political party is to actually get people elected, and you have to go through the process in order to do that. And I've seen some glaring deficiencies within the LP, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen. Maybe different states, but from what I've seen, I just saw glaring deficiencies in even agreeing on the purpose of a political party, for one, and then to see how far they were willing to go in the 2016 cycle. When it came to the people that really were just almost trying to embarrass the party at the convention, because I was actually at the 2016 convention. It was in Florida. I was helping out. We were actually working it because they had good people working the convention. So I was actually working it, and I was standing about five steps off the stage when James Weeks decided to get naked on stage. And I got to tell you, that was one of the points in which I had enough.
Funny story about that. Our co-founder of this podcast, Mike Kniebel, he was actually going to be the next guy up on the stage to make a nomination speech. And then James Weeks gets up there and strips down and completely pulls the rug out from under him.
Well, he had texted all his family. It's like, hey, tune in to C-SPAN. I'm going to be on next. And like his whole family's watching across the country to see James Weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to bring that thing up, but I just, I didn't feel as if I was able to be effective and to get people elected into office as a libertarian. And so the RLC was always good to me. The one thing about the RLC, just so you know, is you don't have to be a registered Republican to be a member of the RLC. Now, I will say, with saying that, you're in an associate member category, so you can't run for you can't run for any of the elected offices within there, and you don't really have any voting rights or anything like that. So there is a down part to that, but you don't have to be a registered Republican to be in the RLC. And I will also say this, is that when I switched over, I made it a point not to necessarily go after registered party libertarians. I think it's the wrong approach to do that. My goal is to actually organize people in the Republican Party to be in the RLC, to be a part of the RLC, not to bring in libertarians per se. If they come over, we welcome them with open arms, but it's poaching, in my opinion.
Oh,
Hold up. It looks like we lost our guest for a second, but I'm bringing him back.
I think I'm back now.
Yes, you are. I don't know what happened there.
Technology, man, it's gremlins. What are you going to do? But that's the way I looked at it. When I switched over, the goal is to, organize it over here. And I will say that we've seen some success when it comes to state house races and state Senate races. And we have a lot of work to do. Nobody's leading the charge. It's so far out that, they can claim victory on this. And I don't think that there's any one way that can necessarily be good or bad. But I will say, in the last election cycle, for the state house races, when you had a group like YAL that was knocking doors for libertarians and libertarians are still losing, they really have to work on the registered voters and getting more people into as registered libertarians, because everybody votes down the party line no matter what, whether it's Republicans, Democrats, or libertarians. They're just going to vote down the party line. So if you don't do the first step, then the rest of the steps aren't going to happen, I don't think.
Well, I guess okay. Now that I have time to think on it, which did you find more harmful, James Weeks or Bill Weld? I'm almost leaning towards they were both equally damaging.
I would say Weeks. I would put Gary Johnson before I put Bill Weld, but not for the reasons that you think, though. The problem is that when you had somebody that was actually able to get money, that was able to get good money, that their campaign was so disorganized around the country that Gary was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I liked Gary. I had no problem with Gary. Now, Weld was an a-hole, but the only reason that Weld won, though, was because Sharp didn't do the job he needed to do before the convention. Nobody knew who Sharp was before convention. If he would have gone around all the state conventions and talked to people there would have been a question that Weld would have lost and that Sharp would have won. Not only would Sharp would have won, but I think Gary would have actually picked Sharp over Weld with that, because Weld's job was just to try to, you got to think, even Weld, when he was there, was only trying to hurt Trump. And now that Weld's there for 2020, his only job in the Republican Party is to try to hurt Trump. Like, he's there as like the establishment, like, spoiler or something. So it definitely was a bad pick for Weld. Gary begged on stage for him, like, I need him in order to do it, because Sharp didn't do the job he needed to do. That's how Weld got in there.
All right, go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah. Okay. So treat me like I'm a brand new libertarian. I'm new to the philosophy. Listened to Ron Paul a bunch. That's how I became a libertarian, actually. But I don't know whether I want to go down the Libertarian Party path or the Republican Liberty Caucus path. Make the pitch to me as to why the Liberty Caucus would be the better organization for me to be a part of.
Okay. The first thing I would do is I would ask you a question. And the question would be, what is your goal in getting involved in politics? Is your goal to spread a message, or is your goal to get candidates that you like elected?
My goal would be to make America a more libertarian country.
Okay. But in order to do that, you got to get people elected into office, unless you're going for the opt-out stuff, which I totally understand if that's what you're going for. But if you're looking at electoral politics and you're looking to get, and if there's somebody that said something there and I got to respond to it in a second. If you're looking at electoral politics, by the way it looks right now, unless you're willing to spend 10 or 15 years in order to build up the number of registered libertarians to see libertarians win elections, and if that's what you want to do, then great. But if you want to see something happen in the next 5 to 10, then I would say joining the RLC is the most effective way you can make that happen.
Well,
Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I think you've commented that they're more of like a think tank. I've seen almost a 180-degree turn in strategy after the Johnson election, where they're going for more of a grassroots now. Do you still keep up on the Libertarian Party, and have you seen that also?
I haven't seen too much of it. So, and what I've seen in Florida, I don't want to do tonight is to do too much disparaging of the LP, especially with two guys.
No, we disparage them a lot.
Well, I'll leave that to you to do, not to me to do that. I've seen some of it, and I've seen some of the candidates that I've seen in Florida that have done a pretty decent, like, they look pretty good. Like, they look decent. Now, are they working on the fundraising aspect of it? Because that, the money's always been a problem. But I think a lot of times the money's a problem because you don't have candidates that are focused on raising the money. So I think that, and to what Ethan said here on the chat as well, was one of the reasons they had a decent amount of fundraising. There is some truth to that, but that didn't happen at in the fundraising dinner that night. And with Larry Sharp and with Nick, because Nick did to give Nick credit, he did a great job that night. They raised like $150,000 that night with the people that came to the convention. So while Weld did well when it came to the fundraising, that's a crutch comparative to if they had people doing the job that needed to be done. So, but what was your question again? I don't think I fully answered it.
Yeah, well, I asked
I'm a brand new liberty. Yeah, you had asked him
he
if
answered
you
mine.
noticed that the LP going to more grassroots.
I've seen some of it, but I haven't seen too much of it. And Florida's got their own set of issues, but there's some states that I think are doing pretty well. But the 18 election cycle, though, showed that even if you got like, because they had some guys and gals, and Nebraska's a good example because you had Laura Epke that was in Nebraska, is that even with the help of YL, who knocked on, 40, 50,000 doors in the area, and she was already elected, so she had incumbent advantage, that she still lost. So there's still a lot of work to do. But I do think on the city council basis and on some of the nonpartisan races, you do see libertarians winning more elections. So if they're focusing more of their effort on city councils, on county commissioners, on things like that, then they are showing, not county commission, but city councils and the nonpartisan races, they're showing some more success. And that will bring more people to state house races down the road, but you still got to get the registered up. You got to get the registered to at least 15-20%.
Yeah, I gotta say, I absolutely agree with you about the Weld versus Larry Sharp fundraising, because I remember a couple years ago I was down at the Libertarian Party of Texas State Convention, and Larry Sharp was there, and he lit up the room with his speech. He was fantastic. And the night before, Bill Weld had got up in front of the convention floor and put everybody to sleep. So I'm absolutely in your corner when it comes to Larry Sharp. He is my guy. And if he runs for president, he has my vote. I want to get on to this next question, though. What kind of success can the RLC claim towards advancing liberty?
Okay. Well, at this point, it depends on what you want to look at it as. When it comes to the federal level, I would say it's all just around the edges. It's, like Trump not bombing Iran at that point because Rand's in his ear.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal, though.
I know it is a big deal. It is a big deal, but it's still not a direct, he made a call. You know what I'm saying? It's having that influence. So I would say that you're seeing a lot more of an influence on a federal level, even though at the end of the day, they're still spending like they're going out of style. They're still infringing on our rights. So the big issues and the overall track, while it may be slowing, we're not stopping it just yet. So I would say on the national level, federally, we're not having a whole ton of success, but that's because we got to work. We got to do just like what I talked about with the LP. You're winning city council races, then you can move up from there. I think that what YL did in the 18 cycle is, and when we saw that, we actually changed up our tactics completely on this one, is that we have to focus on the state houses and the state senates. Now, in that area, I think that we've done very, very well in states that we have large presences. For instance, the state of Florida. While they'll do some stuff to go to the base, and they still are spending more money than we would like them to spend. They went from 18th or 19th to the freest state down to 1, where we were winning battles like the direct care battle, where we're winning battles like, again, front yard gardens. I mean, I know it's a small issue, but be the guy that's going to lose his house because you grow food in your front yard. And I think it's a much bigger issue. When you see things that are moving in that direction, when you see the drug legalization happening, and I think you can't deny that the Libertarian Party is having some influence on this as well. And that's why I think that the combination thereof is where you have those guys on the outside that are yelling and screaming of, the Republicans or the Democrats are saying, we want this and we want this, and they get a percentage of the vote. Just like with Adrian, like in the 2014 election cycle, because Adrian was able to pull $250,000 out of Florida, because he was able to pull that number, the legislature had to look at what the libertarians were doing, and they had to move in that direction, which was another reason that they ended up getting me, was because I saw them starting to move in that direction, but I didn't see them getting a lot of, backup within their own party of some people. I made the decision to switch over in order to be somewhat helpful, to make sure that they knew that there is somebody else that wants them to stop cronyism and to advance liberty within the caucus there. And so I was helping as much as I could in that aspect. So I think that you're seeing a lot of success in state houses, federally, not as much, but in state houses you are. And locally, I think you're seeing at least, and it all depends. It depends on the area too, though. And it depends on the activist there. It's not one size fits all where you stick an R next to your name and all of a sudden you're a cool guy. Like, you still have to do the work. You still got to put in the work. You still got to go out and raise money, and you still have to go out there and and build the relationships that you need. It just so happens that if you're in the Republican Party, you can go to the rec meeting and you can build the relationships, because the infrastructure that the Republicans already have set up is huge. It's amazing what they have already set up compared to the Libertarians. And that's not to disparage the Libertarians. It's just, again, like if you look at my county, like I live in Hernando County in Florida. There's 4 clubs and the rec in Florida that are all Republican clubs. This represents a pretty good amount of, people within there. Libertarians don't have anything in Hernando. And it's not like I wasn't a Libertarian when I moved to Orlando. So it's not like I closed the affiliate down or anything like that. Is that they still haven't built up to where I'm at in Hernando County. But the Republicans have 4 different clubs in Hernando County. So I can go out and speak to a whole bunch of different groups. I mean, it's easy to talk to the converted, but go ahead and talk to the people that aren't converted that may challenge you on the issues. And I think if you're getting those people over, is you do it the right way. Look, if you walk in there and call them a bunch of statists, you're not going to get very far. And that's why I wouldn't think that we want everybody that wants to be a Libertarian wants to come to the RLC. I think it's 2 different tactics entirely. And so I think you have to, and that's why when you said, hey, sell me on why I should be in the RLC, I have to know more about you as a person before I know if this is the right way to go, because you might get burnt out by doing it through the RLC. I mean, look, you still got to deal with people that are build the wall people. Like, you're going to have to talk to those people. You're going to have to talk to people that think that the drug war, the problem is we haven't killed enough people on drugs. Like, you're going to have conversations with people that have disagreements with you, and you're going to have to win those people over within the caucus, because it is a caucus within a political party. And again, if you look at it, even the LP has caucuses. So like, you got the Mises caucus and the Radical caucus and the Pragmatic caucus. So there's different subsets within the party, and parties themselves are anything but vehicles. Like, the Republican Party platform looked a lot more libertarian a long time ago, but it switched over and it moved because people came in there and they made it their own. The numbers make it their own. I have no problem with like the Ron Paul strategy when he was trying it in 2012 and in 2008. His problem was he was doing it for a campaign and not doing it for an organization.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you made a great point about the 2 strategies.
On a personal,
our friend Steven, him and I kind of have a running, I called a bet or whatever on which strategy works better: Libertarian Party on the outside trying to influence, or Libertarians on the inside doing the influence. Because if you're the Libertarian on the outside, you can use that thread of, oh, we're going to run somebody, you better have a liberty leaning candidate, we're going to take that 5% you're going to need to beat the Democrat. You know what I mean? So it kind of keeps the Republican Liberty candidate honest a little bit by us being outside and having that threat.
Oh, I completely agree. No, I completely agree.
And I also found that on the inside, it seems like some of the GOP is just like, well, we've got your vote, go sit in the corner with your caucus.
Yeah.
It seems like some of that attitude too. And that just didn't mesh well with me. But, the bad thing is him and I have this bet going, and somehow we're both losing on, on the advancing of liberty. So neither of us are happy with the results so far.
Here's the thing. I'd be much more optimistic right now. I think that you're seeing maybe it's always darkest before it's light, and maybe I'm just an optimistic person. But I think that because the authoritarian aspect is so out in the open right now, that it is waking people up to what it's like. Again, if you look for all the bad that Trump does, some of the good that he did was he broke the conventional wisdom of currently what a president looks like. And by doing that, I think especially in the 20 cycle, I think you're going to be able to see people that don't fit your normal mold able to win elections. Even in 18, and it was on the Democrat side in 18 with Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib or whatever, is that for all the, the stuff that they focus on of the bad stuff that they do, they were insurgent candidates that beat established candidates, that they were able to do that. All the parties in some aspect are breaking down, and that, finding the good candidates that are running and supporting those candidates is a good strategy to go with, and I think that, if you're a registered libertarian, or you're not like a partisan within the Republican Party, those good candidates that are solid candidates that are running for office in the LP is good people to back. And if you're a Republican, or if you're an independent that likes Republicans as well, and you find good, solid candidates that are running for office as Republicans, you support them. Support the people that are on the front line more than anything else, because those people are the ones that are going to be able to turn the lights off of this big government, basically. Not to steal a Kokesh quote, by the way, because I know that he doesn't like that too much. But
all right, well, we got about 5 more minutes left. I wanted to get your thoughts, though, on this spat within the Liberty Caucus between Justin Amash and Rand Paul, and on the outside, Donald Trump. Well, what is the caucus making of this internal fighting?
well, the caucus itself did not come out with any opinion. And I don't speak when it comes to, like, as the executive director, I'm a very limited in my role as that. So I'm going to give you my personal opinion and some of the things that I saw on it. But the caucus itself didn't come out with any position on it at all. The way I look at it when it comes to the Amash thing is, I understand what he's doing. I understand why he said what he said. I do think that he didn't take the totality of it into account when he made the decision that he made to do it. And I do think that by standing on this principle, which, hey, look, I support, if that's the principle that you want to stand on, is going to could cost him politically. I mean, unless he chooses to run third party, which he might do. I don't know. He might do it. He might not do it. But I think that his approach is needed within the caucus, just like Rand's approach is needed in the caucus. And I think that those two people had a amount of respect when it came to the disagreement that they had. And I think we should see more of that within the people that are all fighting in the same direction. Like, we're all going in the same direction. We have different strategies and we have different opinions on some of these issues, especially an issue like the impeachment issue, because I don't think that Amash was wrong, but I think that he didn't take the other part of it into account of, like, being, fruit from the poison tree. And, the fact that, they had the entire apparatus spying on this guy beforehand, I think that that's got to come into play at a certain point. So I didn't disagree with Amash per se, but at the same time, I thought tactically he's going to have to pay for this one. But I do think he's popular enough in his own area that he's probably not going to lose the next election if he decides to run for Congress again. I do hope he decides to run for Congress instead of running for president, either as a Republican or a Libertarian, just because I'd like to see more people in office as Libertarians. I mean, as Libertarians with a small L, ideologically in office. Right. And I think Amash is phenomenal.
I think he is too, which is why I'm very torn on this issue, because I would absolutely love to vote for him as a Libertarian for president, but I would also hate to lose him in Congress. So it's kind of a conundrum for me, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
All right, so we're coming up on our time. I guess before we leave, why don't you tell us where people can get more information on the Liberty Caucus?
Absolutely. The website address is rlc.org. We're on Facebook because we got a state page for every one of them. So if you're looking to reach out, rlc.org. If you want to email me directly, my email address is alex.snitker, SNITKER, @rlc.org. And again, thank you guys very much. I really do appreciate it. It was a nice conversation. I'll come back at any time you guys would want me to.
Absolutely. And I just want to make this clear for everybody listening who's part of the Libertarian Party. Myself and Ben, we are both Libertarian Party members. Ben was on the State Central Committee last year. I'm on the State Central Committee this year. We still support the Libertarian Party, but there's a very large, sizable group of Libertarians, people who we consider to be legitimate Libertarians in the RLC, and they have a legitimate point of view. And I think that if we're going to talk to members of different caucuses to let them make their case as to why their organizations are best for Libertarians, it's only fair to let Republican Libertarians come in and make their case as well. So thank you very much for coming on the show. This was a fantastic conversation. And yeah, if we ever need to talk to a Liberty Caucus member again, we'll reach out to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
All right. All right, everyone. Remember, the website is roads2liberty.com. Ben has been putting a lot of work into the bios on that website. Thank you, Ben, very much for that. We're on Facebook. We're on Minds. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all the good stuff. So check us out there. Our Facebook page is coming up on 6,000 likes, so get us over that mark. Also, our new discussion group, the Roadkill Cafe, is opened up. We're almost at 1,000 members. So go join that. It's a good time. So thank you, everybody, for listening. You have a good night.